Welcome to the show, folks. This is Wrestling Changed My Life. Here we go.
We can endure anything and adapt and pivot and change. Wrestling gave us that ability.
I would say nothing in life has impacted me more than the things wrestling has taught me in terms of self-reflection, resilience.
Toughness. Some guys have it, some guys don't.
Adversity, 100%. How to pick myself up and be a man after I failed.
And everything that has shaped my life and where I'm at today would not be there without the values and basically the lessons I've learned through the sport of wrestling.
For me, wrestling saved my life because it allowed me to focus and channel my energy.
We're fortunate if you wrestled, because if you wrestled, natural talent helps, but it's 5% of the ingredient. It pales in comparison to heart and technique and effort.
It humbled me, taught me humility. Nothing can humble you more than wrestling. I think it's the learning to adapt, right? You learn how to adapt, you learn how to solve problems.
You know, if I look back at my time I spent wrestling, if it gave me one thing more than anything else, it's mental toughness.
Welcome back to Wrestling Changed My Life. This is your host, Ryan Warner. Folks, thank you for tuning in. You picked a good one because our guest today is Dustin Myers, who's the owner of Old School Gym and Max Effort Muscle. This gym is world-renowned for its gritty, no-frills atmosphere, and he's had the likes of Arnold Schwarzenegger in there, C.T. Fletcher. And he's a strength and conditioning coach for the Ohio RTC, and so he's training Tomasello. He's worked with Reese Humphrey, Tommy Rollins, and that's what we talk about today. We talk about his journey from lifting weights in his dad's garage at age 12 to now owning, a world-famous gym. We also talk about how he got in with the Ohio RTC because, he wrestled in high school but wasn't a great wrestler. And so how did he go from that to training these elite-level, Olympic-level athletes? The last thing I'll say is we do get into some more tactical stuff at the end in terms of diets and workouts that you can use now, even if you're out of wrestling. So really think you're going to enjoy this one. Check Dustin out on Instagram. It's Coach Myers _gutcheck. His gym is oldschooljim.com. And he has an ebook on strength and conditioning for wrestlers. So definitely check that out. Fan of the week goes to Anthony Ornelas. It's Anthony Ornelaz4. And brother, I apologize if I'm butchering that name. I don't have a tongue for the Spanish vernacular, as they would say. But thank you for listening to the show. I really appreciate it. Lastly, this episode is brought to you by our website, WrestlingChangeMyLife.com. It's brand new, and I'm really proud of it, so check it out. It has all of the podcasts on there, all the little videos and clips and blogs. I actually just wrote a blog on the 3 matchups we can't wait for at the 2020 Olympic trials because the World Championships has me excited for the next 10 months of wrestling. So check it out, WrestlingChangeMyLife.com. And that's it, folks. Enjoy this episode. We'll see you again soon. Peace! Dustin Myers, welcome to the podcast, my friend. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great, Ryan. How are you doing, man?
Outstanding. Thanks for doing this, man. I appreciate it.
Nah, it's cool, man. I appreciate you having me on. I mean, you've had such a kind of really elite list of wrestlers and coaches on here. Tom Brandt, Terrell Delagnev, and people are going to steal these names, and they're going to be like Dustin Myers. Like, who the hell is this guy?
Man, I appreciate that, but man, I was just doing some research on you, and for the folks who don't know, you own Old School Gym, and we'll get into that story, but you've had some legends come through that place. Arnold, and we were just talking about C.T. Fletcher. I mean, man, that is one of my favorite YouTube personalities.
Yeah, C.T. was really cool, man. Definitely a larger-than-life personality. He put us through a crazy arm workout here at Old School Gym a few years ago, and he was a lot of fun to work with, and just to have at the gym. I know he really appreciated the style of gym we have here at Old School, and kind of speaking of YouTube personality, kind of the funny thing about it, he has a huge following on YouTube, and YouTube is one of those places where sometimes if you dive into the comment section on whatever video, I mean, you can really fall down a rabbit hole of negativity and whatever else, right? So anyway, they put together this kind of a compilation of of the video of him training us on this arm workout. Well, one of the things he had us do was like 20 sets of skull crushers. You had to work, from 50-pound dumbbells all the way down to like 5s and then all the way back up to 50s all in one set. I mean, it was something ridiculous. And the clip of me doing it was maybe on like the 10th or 15th set, and he's like standing over me screaming, and I'm on the floor doing these skull crushers. I can barely even move my arms. And it's funny, the first comment that I saw show up on the video after I posted was, "Who's the skinny little white bitch at 402 screaming on the floor?" I was so mad. I was like, "You didn't see the 15 sets before that," but that's just kind of how it goes on YouTube comments. You think, here's my big break. I'm finally in CT Fletcher's video, and I'm just that skinny little white bitch.
Well, his following is rough, man. They are hardcore. And man, you gotta share with the listeners kind of how when you guys, before you started filming, it was real cool. Then they flipped the cameras on, and he flipped the switch.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the persona that you see on YouTube, I mean, that's definitely CT, but I would say it's a pumped up, exaggerated version of himself. He's playing a character of himself, or I should say a caricature. So, he walks in, super nice, down to earth, polite, shaking our hands. "Oh, I really like this gym. It's cool that you guys have a coal mine flooring in here, blah, blah, blah." And then as soon as the cameras start rolling, he was like, "All right, damn it, let's go. It's time to get those arms swole." Just really broke into character. I was thinking, man, where'd this guy come from?
That's awesome, man. He is so motivating, and to your point, just seems like a down-to-earth guy. Was a postman for years, or a mailman for years, and then just kind of became a YouTube personality, which is crazy. And so, I
think he was just kind of like your run-of-the-mill personal trainer out there in Los Angeles somewhere. Working, personal training in the evenings, and then like working working for the post office or something during the day, and training some clients, and started making some videos. Next thing you know, it took off. So I think he's a good example of the power of the internet and social media. If you have, something out there where you can kind of motivate people and get people interested in working out, and he was definitely able to do that. So,
well, and that's something I want to talk with you about as well, because you're an entrepreneur and you've branched off from having this gym to now it looks like you're opening more locations. You have ebooks, you have gear, you have all this kind of business coming from your main passion, your gym, which is the cool part about it. So I definitely want to talk about that. But before we get there, for the folks who don't know, you run Old School Gym, which is about 20 miles south of Columbus, Ohio, and you're also the strength and conditioning coach for the Ohio RTC and for the Ohio State wrestling team, or you were at one time. But is that still your role, Dustin?
Yeah, so I'm the strength coach at the Ohio Regional Training Center, which is the kind of the Olympic arm of our wrestling program at Ohio State. I've been the strength coach there since 2012, and for let's see, how long is that now? That's 7 years. So probably about 4 or 5 of those years, I also in that role served as the de facto strength coach for the Buckeyes. So now my role has kind of changed down there. I still work with the senior level guys, Tomasello, Morgan Smith, and as the other guys, Colin Moore and some of these guys, as they graduate and continue to wrestle at the senior level, I'll still continue to work with them. But once we opened the new facility, Jennings facility, Ohio State had wanted to create a full-time position down there to kind of run the strength program for the Buckeyes. And that was, I have all the qualifications, everything like that. I have my CSCS, I have my degree from Ohio State, but it was just really not something that'd be feasible for me with all these other businesses that I have. I would not be able to run my gym and my supplement line and things like that. So that's just kind of how things have shaken out down there that way. But still involved with the program, and really blessed to be a part of something as special as they have down there at Ohio State.
Dude, the new facility is unbelievable. But that's what I'm talking about, man. You got supplements. You got all this stuff going on. It's it's so exciting. So hit us from square one, man. You're 10 years old, 12 years old. You start lifting weights with your dad in the garage. Take us from there, brother.
Oh, man, we're taking it way back. Growing up, that was just one of those things. We had weights out in the garage. And even from as young as I can remember, 3, 4, 5 years old, I remember my dad would, he'd work at the steel mill, and then he would come home and he'd lift weights. And it didn't matter whether it was summertime, whether it was wintertime in the snow. We had this old detached, unheated garage. He'd go in there and lift weights. And, in the summers, he was also helping, coach football at the local high school. And at the time, I don't even know if they had a weight room at the high school, or they definitely didn't have strength coaches or personal trainers or stuff like every school has now. So a lot of his football players, in the off season, they would come come down and lift weights with him. You know, when he'd get off work, they would show up, and it was kind of like almost like the hangout. And I would sit out there, you know, 5, 6, 7 years old and watch these high school kids, you know, who at that time to me seemed almost larger than life. You know, they're tall and they're loud and they're out there lifting. It seemed so fun. I thought, man, I can't wait to be a part of something like that. And, you know, my dad would always say, well, when you're 12 years old, you can start lifting weights. And I just always looked at it, it's just something that you do when you're a man, or whether you're a young man or whatever, you just lift weights. That's just part of your life. And I started lifting when I was 12 and really got into it. I think part of it was too, growing up, I never did any sports. You know, I never played Little League. I never, you know, played football, soccer, nothing. You know, I didn't play any organized sports when I was young. So really my first experience with anything athletically or any sports really related was lifting weights at 12 years old. And I was really small for my age. You know, up until probably, you know, when I was 15 or 16, I was actually the shortest, smallest kid in my class every year. And so that was one of those things where I was, man, I can actually like get strong and, you know, make myself a little bit bigger than I am. So I really took to it and really liked it. And, you know, I haven't stopped lifting weights yet, and I'm 40 years old. So.
And that's what I love about that story is a lot of us can relate to hanging out with the old man in the garage, you know, lifting weights. I remember my brother and I were also super small. I mean, my brother Tanner wrestled 103 up to his senior year, and I wrestled 103 as a freshman. So we were small and even smaller in middle school, and we grew up in a big football town, and so we were, like, wrestling was almost irrelevant. And so all these big dudes were getting all the press, and so my dad goes, listen, you're probably going to be too small to play football. In fact, I don't encourage it. But let's start lifting weights, and then you can get real good at wrestling. And so he bought us a barbell set for Christmas, and it was like one of those really small benches and bars, but I remember doing it with my dad, and he'd chart out, you know, a month at a time, and we were just doing basic shit back then. Now, you know, I'm way into the kettlebells and the functional stuff, but back then it was just curls, military press, and bench or something like that. But it made a difference, man, and it strengthened up your mind, you know?
For sure. I mean, even the most basic program, when you do it consistently, is going to help, you know? So that's kind of the beauty of lifting weights. You know, it's such a low entry point. Anyone can start lifting weights and get stronger. You know, you don't have to have the best program in the world. You don't have to have one of my advanced strength programs. You could literally just start doing the most basic things, and it's going to help you. So
shit, even if you did body weight stuff, I mean, if you did 50 push-ups, 50 squats for a month straight, you're going to see some freaking changes.
Definitely. So that was also kind of one of the things with me. You know, I got into lifting weights, and then I think maybe in 8th grade, you know, one of my best friends, Luke Spencer, he was a very good wrestler, and he was like, hey man, I think you're little, you're strong now, you like working out, why don't you come out for wrestling? And I was like, okay, I'll give it a try. And I went out for like, you know, half a year in 8th grade, ended up kind of, you know, getting hurt. And looking back, it wasn't that serious of an injury, but at the time, having never played sports, I thought my knee was like I was going to be paralyzed or something, you know. So I actually ended up like quitting, you know, or halfway through that year or something, and then didn't go out in 9th grade. But then in 10th grade, you know, he kind of stayed on me and was like, man, he's like, now by that time, you know, by 10th grade, now I'm starting to get very strong because I've been lifting weights for, you know, 5 years or however long it was. And, you know, he was like, man, he's like, come back out. So I ended up, you know, going back out in 10th grade and, you know, wrestling through the rest of high school. And, you know, even though I was a really late starter, I really kind of took to it then and really enjoyed it and was glad that I did. But I don't think if I hadn't lifted weights first, I would have never started wrestling. So. Right.
Well, it's like wrestling lends itself to those small, powerful guys. And if anyone does a quick Google search of you or checks out your Instagram, you're certainly a powerful dude, man. You are absolutely jacked. And so how did you take your love for lifting? Because a lot of people love lifting. And how did you take that into being an entrepreneur and running your own business? Like, what was the next step?
Well, so when I was in college at Ohio State, I don't know, this would have been maybe my second or third year, and my roommate, Corey Gregory, who's now, you know, my business partner, we've been working together for a long time. He was personal training at kind of a local gym there, and he'd gotten a 1-year exercise science certificate from the community college up here in Columbus. And so he was done with school at that point and just training clients full time. I ended up getting like a desk job at that gym that he was working at. And he ended up, you know, got into a dispute with the manager or whatever. And he said, you know what? He's like, I'm going to leave and open up my own place. And at the time, you know, this was 1999, you know, it wasn't like today where everyone on Instagram is an entrepreneur just because they sold Girl Scout cookies once or whatever. You know, it was like it wasn't really, and coming from the area we were from, you know, Eastern Ohio, it's very blue collar, you know, kind of definitely a poor area. And, you know, so it's not like we grew up around a bunch of entrepreneurs or had all these examples of people that had started businesses or whatever. And so I remember thinking he was crazy. I'm like, oh, you're going to leave here and open your own place? How are you going to do that? And so he opened a small training studio right up the road. And so I left with him and started kind of training clients there part-time. And, you know, Corey's one of those guys, very dynamic individual. At the time, you know, I didn't think, I'm like, he doesn't have any business experience. How is he going to do this? But he ended up kind of figuring it out, and the business took off. And then by the time I graduated from Ohio State with my degree in English, I, you know, originally planned to go back to school to be a teacher. I was going to have to get my master's at that point. But by then I was, you know, training clients full time and making probably as much money as I would as a teacher. I thought, well, screw this. I'm not going back to school, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that was in maybe 2001. I ended up, you know, just training full time for a couple of years. And then in 2003, we had an opportunity to buy an old gym that went out of business in Pataskala. And that was the original old school gym. And we kind of scraped together 10 grand and, you know, bought this old gym. And at that point I was a gym owner and I was all in and went from there.
How exciting must that have been to kind of jump off the ledge and like the day or two before you got that 10 grand and bought that gym? It had to be an unreal feeling to be able to do that.
Yeah, it was really cool because, I mean, even up to that point, I still don't know if I really believed that, okay, this is going to be how I'm going to be able to make my living. You know, I think there was a part of me that thought, all right, I'm going to keep personal training, because at that point, it was only a year or two out of college. I was still kind of living a college lifestyle somewhat,
Mm-hmm.
you know, still going out on the weekends and having fun. And I just kind of looked at it like, well, you know, I get paid to lift weights. And I didn't really think that it was going to be possible to do that long term. And, you know, because again, this is before the days of social media. You know, I think it was kind of really the beginning of like having a cell phone. You know, you weren't text messaging yet. And we have very little pictures from the early days of, you know, when we owned the first gym and, you know, we're first training and stuff like that. So I still don't think, I think until we opened the gym, that was when I started to realize, all right, maybe I'm going to be able to actually make a career out of this. And, you know, there was a lot of ups and downs in those early years. You know, there was many times where we thought, all right, are we going to have to kind of cash it in and close the gym, or we're going to have to move on to something else? It took a long time to get over the hump, but we stayed with it, and, you know, almost 20 years later, here we are.
When was the first time you felt like you made it, like you were going to be okay?
Oh man, you know, I don't know. I think I I don't know. No one's ever asked me that before. I think probably once we opened the new location, which was in 2008, which is where we've been, you know, ever since then. So the first gym we were at, it was very small. We kind of struggled there for about 5 years. It was only about 2,000 square foot, but we finally got to the point where we were kind of overflowing a little bit, and we had an opportunity to like rehab this old building. It's an old Kwanzaa hut, about 6,000 square foot. One of my clients, her and her husband own it, and they have like a car dealership and a car lot right beside it, or an auto, you know, mechanic place.
Mm-hmm.
They've been using this old building for storage for years and years and years, and we approached them about renting it out. But, you know, it had been used as, storage since the 80s. So you've never met a pack rat like, you know, mechanic. They save every little part, every little thing, because they think, well, I'll use this later. Well, there was, 20 or 30 years of automotive junk and pieces of cars, stuff stored in here. And we came to them about, renting it out. And they said, all right, you guys can, put your gym in here, but you got to do all the repairs yourself. So Corey and I, we spent about a year rehabbing the gym. And at the time, we took out a loan, but we wouldn't have had enough money to be able to pay contractors to do everything. So we did, we learned how to do plumbing. We learned how to do electric. We built the wrestling room. We built the locker rooms. We did all this stuff on our own. At the same time, we were running our other gym. And at the time, it was a very, very stressful time, and it didn't really feel like we were going to be able to get out of it, but we just knew, like, this is going to be our only opportunity to be able to own a big gym and try to make it happen. We have to do this ourselves. And, we'd come in on the weekends and work 18-hour days, and, during the week, we'd run our other gym and train clients all day, and then still come here in the evenings and, pulling Romex through the rafters until midnight and whatever else we had to do. And I think once we finally got through that and opened the current old school gym, I think that's when I felt like, all right, we're actually going to be able to do this. We're going to be able to make it.
Dude, I just fucking love the grind that you're talking about, man. Like those, it's 11 o'clock on a Saturday, all your buddies are out drinking, and there's no girls around, but you guys are trying to figure out plumbing, and you're like, how the hell is this going to help me run a gym? But obviously, it all goes together. And so you literally built the gym you're in now. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, we
not the outside of it, but the inside of it.
Yeah, right. No, I'm sitting in my office right now and looking around. I still remember, basically framing this up, and we had a lot of help. We had buddies that, I had a good buddy, Tim Dixon, an electrician, where he helped us get all of the, this would have probably been, $30,000 or $40,000 worth of electric work, but he helped us get all the equipment or all the material costs. And he would come in on a Saturday and kind of, do the real heavy lifting, maybe tie stuff into the box or things that we didn't know how to do. But then he would leave us a checklist for the week. He'd say, okay, I need you to you're going to run PVC pipe over to here. You're going to pull Romex in locker rooms. You're going to mount the boxes here, and would show us everything that needed to be done. And then during the week, I would do all kind of the quote unquote easy stuff. And then he would come back on the weekends and help me again. So we had a lot of help from guys like Tim Dixon and, friends like that were contractors and, buddies of ours that, really helped kind of lead the way, because we didn't know what we were doing. So if it wasn't for, kind of their guidance and help, we wouldn't have been able to get it done. But I think, something to really stress is the reason so many people were, willing to help us, is because we had built up a lot of goodwill in the community, the 5 years prior with our gym. We really just always focused on helping people. And that's something that I always stress to entrepreneurs. Everyone's, focused on making money and, building their brand and this and that. From day one, I've always just focused on whatever situation I'm in. How do I help this person?
Mm-hmm.
And if you focus on helping someone, the money comes back to you, whether it's directly or indirectly. And the people that helped us, build this gym and make it possible. Even the woman who her and her husband agreed to rent the gym to us, is because I'd helped her lose 80 pounds and really helped her change her life. So I think that's probably the biggest takeaway from this story is, we had to grind and we had to really work hard, but none of it would have been possible if we hadn't helped all these people on the front end. So, and
it's not just doing it for like a month or a day. You did it for 5 years before you even thought about, branching out, I think.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know if you've ever heard or listened to Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V.
I'm familiar with him. Yes.
but dude, you remind me of his methodology, man, for if you want to be an entrepreneur, okay. It wasn't cool 20 years ago. Now everyone wants to be an entrepreneur, but the bottom line is you got to do it day in and day out for the long term, 5-10 years. And, rather than trying to sell something here, provide a little value up front. And that's what you guys did. And, what I love about your story is you would be doing this even if you weren't getting paid to do it. If there was no social media, you would do this same job no matter what, as I would do this podcast no matter what. So that's what I love about your story.
Absolutely. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Without a doubt, I was doing, what everyone's trying to do on Instagram now. I was doing that 20 years ago, and it's what I'll be doing 20 years from now. It's all I'll ever do, and obviously, you have to make a living. There has to be a financial reward, and I believe it. And, no one should ever feel bad about making money. If you're good at your job, you deserve to be paid, and the people that are very good at their job, and the more people you help, then the more money you deserve to make. That's just how the world works. But yeah, I would be doing this regardless. The same way my old man was teaching, his high school football players how to lift weights in the summertime at our house. He wasn't getting paid to do that. He did it because he wanted to help and he enjoyed it. So that's really the key. And I'm sure the people who listen to Gary Vee hear that. The people that listen to, Corey G on Business and Biceps, they hear that. And it's a common thread you hear from probably all successful entrepreneurs, because that is the formula that works. Focus on help, find something you love to do and then focus on helping people. You hear, kind of that cliche of like, oh, you find something you love to do, you'll never work a day in your life. Well, that is bullshit. It's still work. There's never a day where like I don't have to try hard or, of course I would rather be just, sitting at the beach with my wife and kids than, maybe, doing, computer work at the gym or whatever. But
right.
You have to enjoy it. You have to focus on helping people and try to make an impact on everyone you come in contact with.
Yeah. And also, like, let's just have some gratitude for the age we're in right now, because even if your dad wanted to become a trainer for like elite high school athletes back in the 70s and 80s, there's no internet. And so there's really no way to do it. Now we have every advantage possible because of the internet and social media. And so we can really do anything, from the the comfort of your home. You know, like we're in such a lucky time right now, and I feel like we just have to take advantage of it. Now, what I've really found interesting about your gym is you modeled it kind of after your dad's garage, so to speak. So, like, can you kind of talk about the unique culture or vibe of your gym when people walk in? Kind of what do they experience, and how is it different from a normal gym?
Well, when we say we modeled it after my dad's gym, I think it's more just kind of the mindset. You know, the gym I grew up lifting in, it was dirty, it was loud. You know, the weights, we're in there throwing weights around. We had rap music blaring, you know, things like that. And when they come to our gym, it's kind of the same thing. And the most common reaction I get from people when they walk in is they say, "Oh, this reminds me of the gym I lifted at in high school," or "This reminds me of my buddy's basement we used to lift weights in." And I always say, yeah, that's probably when you had the best workouts of your life. That's when you fell in love with training. You know, every wrestler who's ever walked through the doors here, they immediately love the gym because it feels like a place you come to work hard. It's grimy, you know, it smells like sweat, and there's nothing fancy to it. And I think anyone who's ever, whether you've trained at an elite level or not, you have probably had some of the best workouts of your life, the most grueling workouts of your life in an environment like that. And I think that's kind of what we have, and it's not even like we've had to work to preserve that. I mean, really, that's just kind of the culture of our gym, and people feel that when they come here, for sure.
Yeah, and that's what, you know, I've never been there, obviously, but I can just imagine the kind of the smell and the vibe as you walk in, and why wrestlers gravitate to it. And so, how did you get involved with the Ohio RTC and in the wrestling program there?
All right, so, you know, we kind of talked about the early days of the gym. And, you know, fast forward to, you know, maybe 2010-ish. That's at this point, we've had the new gym open for a couple of years, and we're doing a good job here locally. And, but at this, you know, social media hasn't taken off or anything like that really yet. Kind of still the early days. I think we probably like a MySpace account for the gym or something. And, you know, I mean, we were still doing the same great things. We're doing a lot of the same great things we're doing now, just no one knew about us, you know? But we're starting to get a little bit of traction, at least here in Columbus. People are starting to know who we are. And I ended up also too, I should, you know, kind of mention, I had started kind of developing a niche just here in town as training high school wrestlers. And even early on, I think because I had a background in wrestling, and I still, you know, even though like I mentioned earlier, I only wrestled 3 years in high school, but I still really identified as a wrestler. My mindset was really, you know, as a young man, wrestling is kind of what turned me into a man, I always like to say. So I already kind of, you know, felt and thought like a wrestler. So I think I had a good concept of how to train wrestlers from a strength and energy, you know, kind of standpoint. I understand what positions they need to be strong in, you know, why we need to stress, you know, core and our grip and pulling, you know, maybe more so than strength coaches were doing at the time with wrestlers. So I trained a lot of high school wrestlers at that time, and I ended up, through a mutual business contact, ended up meeting Tommy Rollins. And, you know, I'd been familiar with Tommy. You know, he was a few years younger than me, but when I was at Ohio State, maybe my junior, senior year was when he was there as a freshman or whatever. And at the time, I, you know, kind of loosely followed Ohio State wrestling. And, you know, so obviously I was familiar with him. He was a legend here in Ohio, had a, you know, incredible career at Ohio State. And when I met him, he had been retired for 2 years. You know, he'd been runner-up to Mako in the Olympic trials in 2008. And we met and we kind of hit it off. And I remember thinking, too, at the time, like, man, I can't believe I'm talking to Tommy Rollins. Like, this guy is an absolute legend, you know, larger than life in the wrestling community. And he was like, you know what, man, you know, I know that you've trained a lot of wrestlers, you know, and I'm thinking about making a comeback for 2012, but I've been literally on the couch for 2 years. I retired in 2008, dove headfirst into the business world, thought I'd never wrestle again. And he told me, he said, you know, I was a gifted athlete, so I never really, you know, I did strength training or conditioning. I did whatever my coaches asked, but I didn't really understand it, and I didn't really like it. I just did what they told me to do. He said, but I know now if I'm going to make a comeback and be successful, this is going to have to be a very important part of it. But now at the RTC, you know, down at Ohio State, we don't have a strength coach. You know, all the guys are kind of just winging it, doing it on their own. He's like, I need some guidance. Will you help me? And I was like, absolutely, I will help you. I can't, you know, it was like a dream come true to work with a guy like Tommy Rollins. So it was one of those situations, again, you know, I never asked him for a dime. I never thought, okay, how can I capitalize on this? It was just, how can I help this guy? this is an opportunity for me to help an elite athlete, someone that I've idolized in certain ways, and also an opportunity for me to grow as a trainer. Before, maybe when I'd work with high school kids, I'd think, all right, I'm just going to push them as hard as I can. I'm going to get them as strong as I can. I'm just going to make the workout the most miserable thing they've ever done. And anybody can do that, really, you know?
Yep.
And I thought, but now I'm working with an elite athlete. We're going to try to make the Olympic team. And now I have to really put some thought into this and think like, okay, how am I going to help this guy improve? He's already been at the pinnacle of the sport. How can I help him come back and help him get better? And so I spent 2 years working with him. He would drive all the way out from Hilliard to Pataskil, which if you're familiar with Columbus, it's like a 45-minute drive. He would drive out here, 3 days a week, and I would work with him. We became great friends, and he made had a great comeback, got back on the mat, and, went through the whole trial process. 2012, ended up becoming runner-up to Jake Varner, who then went on to win gold in London. So we were really close. And, kind of a heartbreaking thing for Tommy. It's funny because I would tell people like, oh, he lost this guy, and that guy ended up winning the gold medal, and they would say, oh, well, at least he lost the best guy. I'm like, no, you don't understand.
No.
It's even worse.
Yeah.
Because that just shows how close he was. I truly believe Tommy could have been the Olympic gold medalist that year. It just, it was razor thin, him not making the team, and, Jake making it, having a great draw and all those things. So, but anyway, long story short, that was how, I kind of got on the radar, so to speak. And then, after the Olympics that year, Tommy had reached out to me and said, hey man, he said, you did a lot for me. You were a great help. I really appreciate everything you've done. He said, but, we have some of these other guys down at the RTC. At the time, it was Reese Humphrey, Angel Escobedo, and Keith Gavin, who are all, very successful coaches now, which is kind of, we'll get to that in a second. But he said, man, do you think you could maybe come down here and volunteer and help these guys out a little bit? And so he introduced me to Lou Roselli, who was the RTC coach at the time. I met him. I met Tom Ryan. And, I started driving down there 3 days a week to put these guys through workouts. And some days it would be all three of them. Some days it would just be me and Reese Humphrey. Reese and I really hit it off right off the bat. And, and that was it. And at the time, our gym was still, there's still kind of, social media is just starting to take off. Our gym's still, struggling in some ways. And there would be days where, I would have to drive down there and maybe only Reese would be there, and it'd be like in the middle of a snowstorm in February. And, it would take me an hour and a half to drive there because normally it's 45 minutes from my house. But,
yeah.
In the wintertime with traffic and with snow, it could take an hour and a half. My wife would say she's looking at it as, at this point, I'm losing money. I'm spending half a day, 3 days a week to drive down to Columbus and work out with these guys. And she would think, well, you should be spending more time trying to get clients at the gym. And in some ways, I think she was right, but she also didn't really see the bigger picture. And I think it's like that often for entrepreneurs or someone, people are not going to see your vision immediately. And I saw it as, if I can just go down there and improve myself and make a difference and help Reese Humphrey, help Angel Escobedo, help these guys improve, there's no way that I can't become more involved with the program. Because I saw it at that time in 2012. That was kind of the reputation for the Buckeyes, was that these guys are excellent wrestlers, but they're not strong. They would get pushed around on the mat by Iowa and Minnesota and some of these other teams that were known for being kind of jacked.
Right.
And, so after the first, year and a half or year or so, I think I ended up working out with Tom a few times, and he really liked the stuff I was doing. He liked how I kind of focused on, things that were wrestling related, but still worked on the basics as well. And he started kind of, through the RTC, let me start kind of working with a few of the guys that were redshirting. And then before you know it, I think, maybe a year and a half or so in, they ended up, bringing me on as a staff member with the RTC and kind of turned over the reins to me with the actual collegiate athletes. And that, that was, even just going down there once was a dream come true for me as a former wrestler and as a Buckeye alum and as an Ohio State wrestling fan. But then to really be immersed in the program and to get to train the athletes was like unbelievable. And I think one of the things that maybe stood out that was different about me compared to other strength coaches or other guys you see anywhere else is that I train side by side with these guys. Not only am I lifting with them, but when it's days we got to go to the stadium and run, or we go to the track to run sprints, I run with them. And, part of it is it's a great excuse for me to really stay in top shape and challenge myself. But the big thing is I know that's the best way for me to challenge these elite athletes. They don't, a 21-year-old elite D1 wrestler does not want to lose to a 40-year-old strength coach.
No.
But you better believe it happens sometimes. So, that was a way for me to really bring out the best in my guys as they get in there. And it kind of started with Humphrey is I was like, all right, this guy is a freak athlete, but if I can challenge him on our sprint work, on our lifting, on the bike, whatever it is, I know that is going to be how I can make them better. And that's what I would do when I would train the team as well. And I think the guys really respected that. I thought, you know what, I can't stand on my wrestling resume because I was not a great wrestler, but I can gain their respect by showing that I'm in the trenches with them. I'm willing to work just as hard as they have to work and pushing them on a daily basis. And that was kind of my MO down there.
Dude, how athletic is Reese Humphrey?
Reese is an absolute freak of nature. I think he's the type of guy, he could do any sport he wanted to do, I mean, if he was 6 foot tall, he'd probably be a cornerback in the NFL. He's just absolute freak, super great guy, fun to work with. I mean, we had a lot of fun, and I think that was when social media first started taking off for me and for him, is that we would do these incredibly crazy workouts. A lot of days, my early days down there at the RTC, it was just me and him. And we would just grind on these workouts, and we'd post them, and then we'd say, all right, let's think of some challenges. And we would come up with these crazy, like, athletic challenges or core challenges, and we'd post them. And that was when, Instagram was kind of tailor-made for the stuff we were doing, and no one was really doing that stuff at the time. And that was when our accounts both really started to take off, and that's what really helped kind of boost my business also.
Dude, what I love about that guy is he was the third guest I had, and I didn't wrestle D1. No one even knew who this podcast was, and he did it just because he wanted to help me out. And literally no one had heard of the podcast when he did it, and it was unbelievable that he stepped up. And we're not friends, I would say, but we'll text maybe a couple times a year or before a big tournament. But he's like just the nicest guy, man. And what he's doing now at the New Jersey RTC is amazing. Huge fan of Reese Humphrey.
Oh, incredible guy, man. I, had a great time, the 4 years I was working with him here. We actually became really close friends. I mean, him and his wife and me and my wife, our kids, we both have a boy and a girl, and they're like real close in the same ages. So it was really great having him here. I was really sad for him to go. They kind of poached him and took him out to California. But now, that was kind of the necessary next step for his career. We knew once he went out there, then he would have some really good opportunities coaching-wise. And now you're seeing, look what he's done at the New Jersey RTC. He's only been there for a year. Put 2 guys on the world team, 2 guys that arguably were not supposed to be in the conversation to even make the team.
Right.
Both of them went there and, scored points at the world level. Downey helped the team, won a couple matches. Graf made it to the bronze medal match. And I think you're really just seeing what type of individual and what type of coach Reese Humphrey is. And this is really only the beginning for him.
Yep, absolutely. Now, I know we're coming up on the end here. I have just a couple rapid fire questions for you. The first is, dude,
bring it.
Cool. What I love about your story is, dude, you went to Ohio State, and at the time you're probably kind of a meathead like the rest of us. Like, no one would have ever believed 10 years from now or 15 years from now you're going to be running a gym, and you were at the time the strength and conditioning coach for Ohio State. So my first question is, did you visualize these kind of things, or did it just kind of happen for you? Or did you know where you wanted to go?
Well, I think that the opening a gym thing, it just kind of happened along the way. It's something I always dreamed about, but I wouldn't say I really thought it would happen. It just kind of fell in my lap somewhat. As far as the strength coach for Ohio State, I think once, even when I was working with Tommy, I didn't think that was possible. But once I really got my foot in the door down at the RTC, I think that was when I really started to visualize. At that time, Corey, my business partner at the gym, his career was really taking off. And I kind of seen the way he was visualizing stuff and putting it in action and making it happen, from starting a supplement company and all these other things. So I think once I was down there at the RTC, I realized, like, I got my foot in the door. I am not taking it out. I am going to be the strength coach down here. It was almost just something I knew. I thought there's no way that it's not going to happen, because I'm going to make it happen. And it took a lot of work, but I think that I knew it. But yeah, back in the day, no one would have ever guessed that. No
one. And that's what I love, is like, no one can tell you what you are or not possible of. I mean, Super Rain, but I just watched the documentary on Travis Scott, the rapper, and like same kind of thing. They show him when he was 5 years old. Now he's like, 25, and he was talking about what he's going to do now back then, and no one believed him. But it's just, if we can just shatter these self-imposed limits, there's a lot possible.
Well, I'll tell you, and real quick before you give me my next question,
hit me.
I got to, so in life, people put these self-imposed limits on themselves, and they worry about things that are outside of their control. They worry about this person and that person, what this guy's going to do. What I always stress, and what we always preach with our company, Max Effort Muscle, the one thing that you have control over every day is your own effort, and it is maybe the only thing you're going to have control over. So you always have to give maximum effort, because that is one of the only things you can control. You know, when you think about it from a wrestling standpoint, you can't control whether you're going to draw the returning state champ first round, or how much this guy worked, or who's this guy coach, who his coach is, or whatever. You can control your own effort. You can control how hard you work in the mat, out there on the mat, how hard you work in the practice room, how hard you lift, how hard you work in business, your own effort. So control that, and then the rest of the things will take care of themselves.
Amen, baby. Amen. And I did not realize that you also owned Max Effort Muscle. I stumbled across the video you did on YouTube where you're making fish tacos back in 2016, man.
Yeah, I like to cook. Yeah, so that's one of the things I try to teach all these meatheads out there, is how to be kind of well-rounded and how to cook and things like that. So yeah, I have a kind of a cooking series on there called Muscle Meals.
Love it. Second to last question is, in terms of your daily routine, obviously you're an animal. I see you working out all the time. What does your daily routine look like, and then how are you kind of fitting in your own workouts in addition to your training?
Well, I mean, my routine really varies, day to day. I mean, but a typical day, I might get up at 4:30 or so, get up, have some coffee, head into the gym. Might train one or two clients. I still keep a few clients that I train early in the morning. And I may even work out with them. It just depends. And then, just depending on that day, either I stay here at the gym or I go down to the RTC to work with, Tomasello and some of those guys. And again, I'll train with them as well. So a lot of times now, whether it's with, Tomasello or with my high school wrestlers, I'll get one of my workouts in a day with them. And then I'll fit another workout in at some point during the day. Typically, I train twice a day. And then, kind of work on my ebooks and things like that. I have got to make a quick plug for them, my wrestling strength conditioning series. I'll work on those at some point during the day, or whichever one I have coming out next. Obviously, use some content for social media, do stuff here at the gym. Then before I try to make it home, in time for, my kids to get off the bus, or, even like tonight, I'm coaching my son's soccer team, helping with that. We got to go there at 6 o'clock tonight and cook dinner and spend some time with the wife and the kids in the evening, and then start it over the next day. So a lot of variable day to day, but it's basically almost all of it revolves around fitness and family.
And do you make time, like specific times throughout the day or the week, to make content for social media and for your website? I mean, I know you just mentioned it, but do you block that off every week and stay diligent on that?
Yeah, so there's probably 2 days a week where I'll try to block off an hour or 2 hours worth of time to do specific content, write articles, shoot specific videos, but then a lot of it I kind of do on the fly. I try to capture stuff that we're actually doing. Maybe it'll be whatever, me and NATO are doing that day, or whatever sprint workout I'm doing that day. I'll kind of capture it in the moment. So I would say kind of a mix of the two. Got it.
Okay. And then it's hard for me to limit this last one because I have so many questions I want to ask just selfishly about diet and things, because I follow the paleo diet 6 days a week. Then I have one day where I go Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson style, and I go crazy on pizza and cookies and stuff like that. But I guess the last question is, what are your thoughts on kind of the ideal diet for a wrestler in terms of paleo, intermittent fasting, I guess kind of all of that just wrapped into one. What are your thoughts, or what are some big misconceptions for wrestlers, or even people who are trying to stay healthy after wrestling in terms of diet?
Okay, that was about 40 questions.
I know.
One, but I'll see if I can take a stab at it. So, yeah, nutrition is a very multi-layered, subject. It's kind of hard to really, nail down, say this is perfect for wrestlers or this is perfect for people after wrestling, because everyone's body is so different. So, number one, I got to say, one of the biggest misconceptions I've been working to really change with my training style, with my content, stuff like that, is that wrestlers need to lose a ton of weight to be successful. I've had a great deal of success at the high school and at the college level of, moving athletes up every year. If you look at, I think 2 years ago, when I was running the strength program for Ohio State, I think 5 of our 10 starters had moved up in weight from the year before, or from the weight they were recruited at. So number one, the biggest misconception is that guys got to suck a lot of weight to be successful. So I think, diet-wise, now that doesn't mean you can just get big and bloated and, like you said, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson style and eat whatever you want. you need to be disciplined in the way that you eat year round, not just during the season. I think a lot of wrestlers run into problems because they eat whatever they want in the off season. They gain a ton of body fat, maybe a little bit of muscle, and then when it comes time to try to make weight, they're scrambling and starving themselves. So I think year round, I think the paleo diet, or even eating kind of paleo-ish, is great. I would say it's maybe, somewhat similar to the way that I eat. I stress to, even my high school wrestlers, stay away from processed food, stay away from fast food, try to eat things that have one ingredient. So as much, meat, fruits, vegetables, nuts, eggs, avocado, as much things like that as you can every day. So just kind of give a quick template of how I tell my high school wrestlers to eat. I tell them, all right, first thing in the morning, wake up, and before school, intermittent fasting and stuff like that I think is great for people once you're done growing. I do a version of fasting myself. I have coffee in the morning, then don't eat till after my first workout. But for high school kids, your body's still growing. Wake up, eat some eggs and toast, eggs on a bagel, whatever it is, whatever combination, eat some eggs first thing. And then during school, I tell them to snack on, either have a protein shake mid-morning or some nuts and fruit, keep that in your locker. Then during lunch, try to have something somewhat healthy, stay away from French fries, stuff like that. If you can pack, lunch and maybe have, chicken and brown rice or something along those lines, that'd be perfect. And then maybe, mid-afternoon, have another snack, some nuts or some fruit, and you have lifting or wrestling practice or whatever after school. And then I tell them usually, hey, try to eat whatever mom, makes for dinner. But in an ideal world, you would have, maybe steak and a sweet potato and a salad, something like that for dinner. And the closer they can eat like that, the better. If they're going to have some extra stuff on top of that, that's fine. But I think the closer they can kind of stick to that template, they're going to gain strength, gain muscle. Their body fat's going to stay kind of, in the lower ranges in that 10 to 13 range. And you want to try to get that closer to a 10% range once they get into season.
See, that's what I love about that paleo kind of diet, right? It's like you still get to eat steak and sweet potatoes. You get to have chicken and rice. I mean, the brown rice I think is the one area where I don't know how some people feel about it for paleo, but bottom line is you can eat that all that good food and it's one ingredient. Like that's like the basic shit I'm talking about. I love that, man.
Yeah. So that's why I said kind of paleo-ish. I don't like to tell people that I eat paleo because it's some of the same concepts, but there is other stuff, grains and stuff thrown in there. I eat a lot of quinoa, a lot of brown rice and things like that. So, but yeah, I would say you're not far off for sure.
I love it, man. And I think people are going to get a lot of value from this just because of just that piece right there. Changing the diet, I think, is huge, and it affects how you feel. It affects how your mind operates. And it's been a game changer for me. I know when I stopped wrestling in college, I wrestled 149, and about a semester later, I was up to 183, and luckily my mom kept me honest. She goes, "You're fat, man." and ever since then, that was kind of a wake-up call that, hey, the metabolism does slow down, but it's not like we just have to accept the fact that when we're 30 or 40, that's it, right? That's bullshit. I mean, you can change your whole physique and your mindset just by eating clean and by working out, man.
Oh yeah, I think people get older, especially ex-athletes. They get out in the real world and maybe they don't train like they used to, and they just accept aging. It's like, okay, now I'm supposed to be old and fat and weak, and they live on their glory days of what they did, wrestling in college or playing football in high school or whatever. Like, people get old and weak and out of shape and fat because they let it happen to themselves. And there's no shame if that's what you let happen, but there is shame in letting it continue, So for anyone out there that's listening that is not happy with where they're at physically right now, I'm going to say, just like I talked about effort earlier, you can make the change right now. You just have to commit. It just, starts with today, and then the next day is tomorrow, one step at a time, one foot in front of the other. That's it.
And if they want to learn about that stuff, your website's a great place for it. So what are all the spots you have online? You have the website, you have the blog, the supplement companies. Hit them with where they can find you and all the things you'd recommend checking out.
Well, I'll tell you, I got so much stuff out there that you really have no excuse not to check out what I have. I mean, if you want to follow my daily stuff, that's where I do a lot of the craziness on Instagram, @CoachMyers_gut-check. If you're more of a Facebook guy or gal, I think it's @CoachMyers-gut-check, but without the underscore in there. I got my wrestling strength ebooks are available at WrestlingStrengthTraining.com. If you want to check out check out our line of supplements, Max Effort Muscle. We also have tons of content on there. My cooking show, Muscle Meals, is on there. On YouTube, Old School Gym OH. And then just the VA address for the gym or the web address for the gym is oldschooljym.com. Or check this one out, Join a Real Gym on Instagram.
Perfect. And what's one supplement you recommend starting with to start with? Because sometimes it can be overwhelming.
Yeah, no doubt, man. Most of our supplements are very basic. We don't have all this crazy stuff out there and these borderline ingredients that we don't know if they work or you don't know if they're going to pop you on a drug test or whatever. We stick to the basics and what works. And our most popular and my favorite is our Amino Recovery. We actually formulated it specifically for wrestlers and combat athletes. So it's branched chain amino acids and glutamine and also electrolytes. So it's going to help you rehydrate after a tough workout, after conditioning, after lifting, whatever. But those branched chain aminos and glutamine are absolutely crucial, especially if you're on somewhat of a calorie restricted diet. It'll help you maintain your muscle mass and maintain your strength during wrestling season. So helps your body kind of repair the damage you've done during your workout, helps you recover, and will help you maintain your muscle and your strength.
Awesome, man. I might even take a look at it because I was looking at it before the interview here, and I want to get your take on, hey, if I'm going to start with one, what would you recommend? So that's perfect.
The amino recovery, without a doubt.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining the podcast, man. This was a lot of fun, and I know I got a lot from it. Greatly appreciate your time, sir. Thank you.
Thanks, man.
And all great things must come to an end. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, give us a review, give us a rating, and share this with your friends. It would mean the world to us. Thanks for listening to Wrestling Changed My Life.